Welcome to the Panic Button. I'm Nina.
I'm Jessie.
Can you move over here a little bit more? That's better. She's still Jessie.
So on The View, they had the head of GLAAD, you know, the trans activist organization.
That used to be the gay activist organization.
And they're telling them that LGBTQ people are under attack.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. As you can tell, in society right now, the LGBTQ community has been under attack, right? And one of the
Right.
You can't just say something and then gloss over it with a right. That doesn't make you right. What do you mean by that? How are we under attack? I know that people are saying from the Republican, like that the Republicans are using the trans identity to convince more people to be Republican, right? That's what they're saying?
I think so, yeah.
Now, they're not using it. It's just a really good reason to change up. Now, They had, one, maybe 2 ads during Trump's campaign?
Yeah.
That were, like, actually obviously stating trans, right? That doesn't sound like their whole campaign hinged on it.
No, but they were just pointing out that the trans overreach is happening.
And they noticed
politicians support it.
Sorry. I think they noticed that they were getting people over for that reason, and they were like, shit, let's make an ad about it quick. We gotta nail this before we lose it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're salespeople. Like, Trump comes from sales.
Yeah.
And if something is fucking selling, you're putting it on a pedestal. You're raising the price. You are saying exclusive at my shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they didn't use it when they could, because obviously anyone would. But it's not the foundation of their party. The foundation of his party really is make America what you remember.
Yeah.
It's not make America something that you want it to be. It's make America what your grandparents had. It's make America what your parents had.
Yeah, like my parents could buy a house on a one-person salary. My grandparents could buy a house, but my parents, their kids, have a hard time buying a house.
Did you hear? Sorry, totally off topic,
No,
but about Trump. There's the import tariffs have been raised, which means that foreign cars are going to cost more. That means you have to buy American-made cars or else you're going to pay 10 times more.
I can't even afford to buy a car.
Oh my God, you mean that American-made products are going to be less expensive? You mean you're making Americans work again? Crazy. Why would you?
That's out of my ballpark.
But still, just on this topic of Trump, you know, like, what you're doing is pulling America back to its roots. We make things, we defend our home, and we defend people who need defending. That is the roots of America.
And helping poor people.
Yeah, I don't think that they're doing anything that's attacking us.
The LGBTQ?
Yeah, and we watched the Apprentice movie the other day.
The Apprentice, yes.
Sorry,
The Apprentice. Apprentice. Apprentice.
That Donald Trump biopic.
Yeah.
Which I can't say certain
way
words.
Too short.
But one of the first things you realize when you're watching that movie is that Donald Trump was actually very close to people who were homosexuals.
Yeah, he was.
It was very fast to get you to that point. And even if they denied their homosexuality, that doesn't mean that he didn't
know people who are homos.
No, continue to support and use the advice and services of people who are homosexuals. He never said, oh my God, they're gay. You know what I mean?
I can't work with them.
Right, he never stopped working with them. And so when you say that Donald Trump is so against gays, I would like to at least point to that. Maybe they weren't openly homosexual, but you're telling me that he didn't know?
But a lot of people weren't openly homosexual in the 80s.
Right, you're telling me he didn't know? And they were that close?
Oh, no, he knew.
He knew, and he continued to say nothing about it because he knew it was taboo at that point. But it didn't stop him from working, which means he's not homophobic. Sorry, he doesn't like the trans stuff. But like you said earlier, it takes the L's, the G's, and the B's out of it completely. Even the B's, because the bisexual people still want men or women. It's the what do you call it? Not polyamorous, pansexual people who actually, those are the queers that venture into the other stuff. You know what I mean?
Pansexual is just bisexual with extra steps.
I mean, I would say if there's ever a point that pansexual is valid, it should be today. If you want to make pansexual a thing, this is the point.
It's just bisexual.
Yeah, but it says you're going to date trannies.
You're going to date people who present
Sorry.
as female or male.
Yeah, blank out what I said because it'll get us canceled
Yeah,
on YouTube. But
Divisive tools that's been used is to kind of pull us out and say that we live over here. LGBTQ people are in every family. We're in every workplace. We're in every church. And telling stories brings people together. It doesn't separate and divide people. We're all Americans.
No,
Okay.
they're smart for using storytelling because storytelling can be very manipulative. It can be very,
emotionally provoking.
yes, and that's why they do it. But it's just anecdotal when it comes down to it. It's not actually stating facts. It's just storytelling.
Very few, and you can, I don't know this is a fact, but I know this in my heart. That very few gay people go to church.
That's true. Maybe more now than before, but yeah, still.
But they're the Blair Whites.
Yeah.
They're not the people who are out there touting and demanding that you call them ma'am.
Yeah.
They're the Blair Whites.
But then there are like these gay churches with like gay pastors and stuff, and it's just
Well, that's like a cult. I don't care what you say.
they tout queer ideology, which is just an ideology. It's a theory. It's not actually. Well, it could be considered a religion, but then it wouldn't be Christian, would it? It'd be like
I would
Christian
say-
with queer ideology,
I would
which would make it
argue-
something different.
I would argue it's not fully Christianity because Christians believe that God doesn't make mistakes. You make free will choices, which can lead to transgenderism. So you can still technically love someone in Christianity with transgenderism. But that doesn't mean you should make the foundation of your religion that. You know what I mean?
Queer ideology. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's a struggle either way, depending on what kind of like household you grew up in and depending on your personal beliefs. If you had any like religious background, you had to struggle with your religious identity and your sexual identity.
Yeah.
And so, yes, like I said, there are some people in the church that are LGBTQ, right? But I'd say a majority of them have had to understand religion to their extent and move from there. I don't think that it's against any religion, but I don't think it's definitely pro any religion. You know what I mean? Maybe like just gender ideology, but like
That's its own religion. It has its own belief
that's what I mean.
system.
But it's not quite any other religion.
No.
No.
And we all need to be treated with respect and humanity and have equal rights.
Yeah.
And we don't still in
Yeah.
this country.
Yeah.
And so I think by
What rights are not equal exactly?
Donde está la equal rights?
See, you can't have rights that infringe on other people's rights because those are privileges. Those aren't actually rights. So if what she's trying to say is that they don't have their rights because trans women aren't allowed to play sports with biological women, that's not a right. That's a privilege. That's impeding on the rights of females, and that's actually more oppressive than progressive. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's a bunch of
only-
baloney.
The only rights that have currently been revoked is the right to use whichever bathroom you approve for yourself.
Your gender bathrooms have to do with sexual organs, okay? When it comes down
Yes.
to it, sexual organs and what
Yes.
you pee out of, okay? It
Yes.
has nothing to do with how you identify.
No, I
They're
agree.
trying to mix it up and make it so everyone buys into there is no such thing as sex, only gender. And that's not how majority of Americans feel.
But like I said earlier, donde está la missing rights? Because as far as I know, you don't want to marry me yet because of your student loans. But if that wasn't the case, we could get married. If I wanted to.
You could.
And if you wanted to.
We could.
There is nothing legally stopping us from going and eloping right now.
Right. But I don't like how when these people get on these shows and say they don't have rights or we don't have rights, they don't actually,
List what we don't have.
yeah, they never do. And
That's
it's
what I'm
like
saying.
you're missing like
That's what I'm saying. Can I
what
marry
is it?
you?
Yeah.
Can I visit you in the hospital if we're listed as significant others?
Yeah.
Can I, if we get married, share my health insurance with you? Mm-hmm. Can I have every right to be your, what do you call it, power of attorney if anything goes bad?
Yeah.
Your emergency contact. There's no one stopping me from going into your hospital room.
Right.
If I say I'm your significant other, there's no one questioning if that's even allowed, right? There's no one stopping me because I'm not a man. What rights do we not have
I don't know. She didn't tell us.
That's what I'm missing. That's what you're missing. That's what they're missing. And I think that's the flaw in their whole thought process is that
One of many.
They're not listing and they're not showing. And if you want to say, yeah, the transgender people aren't getting the right to use the bathroom that they want to use, that is a statement
That
that's
we need
true.
gender identity bathrooms.
But like that's a statement that's true. And you can use that as your this is why we're not getting equal rights. Sure. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is a argument you can make in defense of what you're saying. But you're not even making that argument. And that doesn't involve the L, G, or the B. That only involves the T and sometimes the Q.
It's just a lot of empty statements.
Exactly. It's just misleading information that makes you believe, oh, I'm under attack, but we're not. There's nothing even stopping transgender people from marrying transgender people or cisgender people. So you're technically fine. You have every right that you could want.
Storytelling, we bring people together. You can't hate someone whose story you know.
Yeah. And beyond America.
I disagree. I disagree.
I disagree too.
You know whose story we know? Hitler's. Do you disagree?
She's not
Tell
very
me.
smart. Or she doesn't sound very smart.
Stalin? Do you disagree? Tell me if you disagree, because I would like to know.
I would also like to state that we're not actually lesbians now.
What?
Okay, listen.
What are you fucking saying?
Wait.
No,
Hold on.
I don't want to.
You can't interrupt. Let me get through it. Okay.
I mean, yes, I don't want to interrupt you, but at the same time, I'm never going to let anyone just tell me I'm not a lesbian. How fucking dare you? Continue.
She says LGBTQ people are under attack, okay? So what's a lesbian, right? I asked Grok what a lesbian was.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Sorry, you're right.
And lesbians are people who are attracted to either females or people who identify as female, right? Well, I'm a lesbian. I'm not attracted to people who identify as female, right? So that doesn't make me a lesbian, right? I can't identify as being a lesbian if part of being a lesbian is being attracted to people with penises. So now we're not lesbians anymore. So I had to ask Grok what the a lesbian is. And I'm sorry. I had to ask Grok this. If being a lesbian today means being a female attracted to people who present as female, then what is a female who is strictly only attracted to biological females called? And it said lesbian, the traditional usage, but which doesn't mean anything anymore because they fudged up the term. We have female homosexual, but when I asked Grok what a female homosexual was, they also gave me the fucking runaround. Sorry, let me... Blah, blah, blah. Explicitly attracted to biological females focusing on sex rather than gender. It's favored by some who wish to clarify this attraction is tied to biological reality.
Yes, but men want to abduct that term because they want people who only have vaginas. So they call themselves biological lesbians? Is that what it is?
Yeah, because they're biological and they're lesbians. Grok also said we could be called sex-based lesbians or sex non-gender lesbians.
I mean,
All because they took away the term lesbian, the original term of lesbian, which meant a female attracted to a biological female.
If you subscribe to today's crazy, then yes, I can see why you have to get like this deep into it.
It's all in the eye of the beholder at this point because there are people who believe in gender queer theory, which means that there is no same-sex attraction, there is no male and female, it's all personality. Gender is the only thing, and you can only be attracted to people who, if you say you're a lesbian, they identify as female, but they have a penis. And that's not what a lesbian was to me, but now apparently it is. So now I'm not a lesbian. So now I'm not in the acronym anymore. So you're only talking to bisexual people.
Well, only based off of terminology. I'm surprised because I find that people who even do subscribe to this ideology, you know what I mean? They have
ideology?
Ideology.
Okay.
I would find that a lot of them would still call people like us lesbians, but they don't specify traditional. But they mean traditional because I've had people who definitely don't identify as lesbians call me like a lesbian. But I've never heard them call themselves lesbians. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I've heard men calling themselves lesbians. But it seems to be the female to male don't want to identify as lesbians. And I've heard that they don't dislike the word lesbian.
They identify as gay men.
I don't know. I don't know what.
If they're attracted to men.
I mean, you'd think, what do you call a female to male who's attracted to a female to male. If
A
not,
female to male who's
because
attracted-
they're not.
Two trans men who are attracted to each other.
It's like if we both transition.
Then I guess they're gay. They're gay men in the new age term of what gay is, which is anyone who's attracted to a masculine person who identifies as a male.
What if they aren't masculine?
Well, that's the thing. Is
What if
most
they
of the
just
people who
identify as masculine?
right? That's where it
But they
gets all
present
weird.
What if they look very feminine, but they identify as masculine, but they're with someone who has a vagina,
Who identifies as masculine?
and they won't be with anyone who has a penis, but they will be with someone who has a vagina but identifies as a man.
I think
And seems
they
to
would
only
be
want
called
that. Trans chaser.
genital critical trans men. I think.
You have to cut this out, but I'm talking about Cass.
No, I figured as much.
Yeah, please.
I
cut
figured
this-
as much.
That's why I was like, you have to cut this out.
See,
this
then
part.
that's the problem, because if they identify as masculine, but they're a female who looks like a female,
Feminine, down to wearing makeup.
then are they? Because they're not showing any masculine features or tendencies or anything like
what it
that.
ends up
so
being, and I don't
it's
mean
just
this-
all in your head. So how do you?
Right. What it
how do you
is,
know
and
how
I
they
don't mean this
identify?
as an attack, but they're tomboys. They're tomboys.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're into masculine presenting females to just get the terminology
Butch,
correct.
okay, or tomboy.
But like just from a personal anecdote, I'm into women who are stronger and more dominant.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean feminine or masculine.
Mm-hmm.
That can capture both a lot of the times. So I have been into masculine women and I've been into feminine women. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, what do you call?
Well, here's another thing. Here's another thing.
If you ask me,
What if?
wait, hang on, sorry, because we're not done with that. So just hold on to it, please. But to me, that's a lesbian. Would that not be a lesbian to you? Because to me, a pussy plus pussy equals lesbian. But to them, what does that mean?
Well, then it's like, well, what kind of pussy? Are we talking about, like...
What does the face look like?
Does
to pussy?
a man's penis identify as a vagina? I mean, now we're getting into weird stuff here.
then
that doesn't make no sense.
The sexual aspect of it is completely skewed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't call yourself straight, let alone a homosexual man, if you're both diving into the muff. You know what I mean?
Okay, but what if you're a biological female who does not identify as man or woman? They just say, I'm a biological female. I don't have a gender identity.
Remember earlier?
I am a female who is only attracted to biological females. Does everyone have a gender identity? And if they don't, and you're
Yes.
attracted to that
No.
person who doesn't have a gender identity, then what does that make you?
Yes. Everyone has a gender identity.
Really, I
But-
don't. I'm a
But-
biological female. I don't subscribe to gender identity. I don't have a gender identity.
Hang on. Yes, everyone has a gender identity. You feel more masculine or feminine. But that doesn't mean you have to, like, prescribe to a certain, like, aesthetic.
I don't feel more masculine or feminine. I'm just me.
That's not true. Do you like the days that you feel pretty?
Yeah.
Do you like the times that you feel strong or like you can take on the world?
Yeah, but that might be dangerous. So yes and no.
So those are both feminine and masculine, hypothetically masculine traits. To feel strong and big, like you can take on anything. That's a masculine trait.
But what
to
if you don't
but
subscribe to
but
masculinity or femininity?
To feel pretty is a feminine trait. And if you don't believe in either of those,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean, I mean, that's where non-binary came from. Is the fact that you don't just
So am I non-binary?
No, you're not. And that's what I'm trying to say. Are you comfortable with your genitals?
Yeah.
Then you're not non-binary.
Okay.
Non-binary would have at least a hint that you're not comfortable with the genitalia.
Are you sure?
have.
Because what I've heard is that they just don't subscribe to male or female tendencies. They're just there.
That's bullshit.
But I don't think they believe in biological sex either, or like
I would ask
sexual
them.
orientation.
I would ask them the same question. Do you feel pretty some days? Do you feel like you're masculine some days? Do you feel like you're feminine some days? Guess what? That's human nature. Are you comfortable with your genitals? Do you have confidence when you're having use of your genitals?
Yeah. The only ones I've had.
Are you emboldened by the use of your genitals?
What does that mean, emboldened?
Like, do you
Emboldened
feel
for
do you
what?
feel confident? Do you like the feelings you get when you're using them the way you want to?
I mean,
Not in a weird way. Just
Yeah, I don't know. I've never asked that before.
This is the question you have to ask when it comes to gender dysphoria, because that's a big part of it. Yes, I know as a lesbian, you often like fulfilling the male role of it. That's what makes you more of the masculine one and more of the feminine one, right?
Okay.
Right. Not to, you could cut out whatever you want to cut out.
Okay.
But this is just me even explaining it. You feel a little bit more masculine, but that doesn't make you the man because you have confidence with your genitals
Yeah.
in sex. You're not
Yeah.
uncomfortable with the fact that you don't have a penis.
Right.
You're fine with it.
Yeah.
People who don't feel that way would have actual gender dysphoria. So to say that I'm non-binary because I'm not sure how I feel about my genitals, it makes me uncomfortable, but that's valid. Like you can, that's a form of gender dysphoria to not feel comfortable
Is that
with the physical gender, sex. Mentally, your gender feels, I should have the penis. This doesn't feel right. That's the difference.
But how do you know when you have the penis that you'll feel right if you don't have the penis to begin with?
It's not a matter of feeling right. It just feels wrong when you're doing it the way that you've been,
Okay.
the way that you're supposed to, quote unquote, do it. That doesn't mean that you can't use alternatives to have that sensation. That doesn't mean people can't have surgeries to fulfill that sensation. But it does mean that, like, you have to have some discomfort with that region. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't seem to be that case anymore. It's an emotional feeling. It's not like a physical feeling.
Yeah, it's all in your head.
Yeah, 100%. But if you were to say to me that you don't feel right using your female parts during intimate times, then I'd say, well, maybe you're trans or maybe you're non-binary or something like that. But that I'd say that's the difference. A lot of these times, these people, they're completely comfortable using their God-given sexual anatomy. They just want to be viewed as something different.
Right. And apparently, if a female is attracted to that male who identifies as female, they're a lesbian, which absolutely negates what a lesbian is
And I bring
in
that
the
back.
traditional sense. So I'm not a lesbian, apparently.
I bring that back to sexual parts, because if you're a man who only wants to have sex with a woman, but you have a penis.
In the traditional sense.
In the traditional sense.
But you want to be viewed as a woman.
If you want to be viewed as a woman, but you are comfortable using your penis in the traditional God-given sense,
Then that's not trans, that's cross-dresser.
that's just wearing different clothes. That's
Yeah.
just wanting to be called a different name.
But why do they call themselves trans then?
That's the problem. If you actually feel discomfort, if you actually can't use those parts, then that's people get in this debate of like, oh, true trans isn't a thing. But I think there are people who truly suffer from gender dysphoria. We're not saying
They're
there's
changing
truly
the definitions of every
part.
letter in the acronym.
Not
to
just
begin with. The L,
I mean, Q is
Gs,
weird, but
the B's even
and
the
T's.
T's.
Yes, because we understand that. We understand at least not having the anatomy to fulfill your partner's needs.
Yeah.
We understand that to a sense. You know what I mean? As
No.
lesbians,
No, I don't fulfill your needs because I don't have a penis.
that's why we use.
If I don't use a strap-on, I can't fulfill your needs.
That's not always true, but things like that show that we know that there's a different type of fulfillment you get out of different types of sex, right? So that's what I'm getting to, more or less. If you were trans, you would feel like you couldn't fulfill me with the strap-on or the alternative, right?
No, wouldn't that mean that you couldn't be fulfilled by using the, I don't know.
But regardless, you'd feel incapable because you were lacking the parts. As
That's why they make
lesbians-
the parts in sex shops and stuff.
Exactly. As lesbians, you're okay. In fact, you prefer not having the parts.
Yeah.
That's the point.
I don't need it to fulfill my partner's needs.
And the partner doesn't need the physical attachment to fulfill their needs.
Yes.
That's what makes them lesbians. However, in straight sex, if you were trans,
So a lesbian can have straight sex and still be a lesbian.
No.
According to gender ideology,
Yes. In my opinion, no. According to that, yes. However, if you are trans and in a quote unquote sexually lesbian relationship. Why don't we call it sexually lesbian and then gender lesbian?
I mean, you could,
That makes more sense to me. But anyways, if you were,
but you're still being called a bigot regardless.
right,
I mean, which doesn't matter.
If
But
you feel in a sexually lesbian relationship, if you feel like you cannot fulfill your partner's needs with the attachments you currently have, then I say, yeah, you're trans. But I don't think that that's the case with lesbians. So that's why I think the big difference is, and that's why I guess I was just saying that, like, what about sexual versus trans lesbian?
it's no longer what is a woman, it's what is a lesbian. Anyway, comment below and let us know what you guys think.
What do you think? What's a lesbian?
Like and subscribe, join our memberships, because I'm going to have to censor some stuff. Because we said pussy and
I think anyone's
all that shit. So
members only for that. Sorry, it's just such a deep rabbit hole.